I've had patients tell me, well, hey, I know that it would probably be better if I used a drugstore brand. I've seen dermatologists talk about that, but they just don't look very cute. I don't think every child is an educated consumer about anti-aging. This is just what's the popular trend right now with these products looking colorful.
Hi, Skin Friend. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of The Skin Reel. This week, I'm really excited to have Dr. Brooke Jeffy joining me on the podcast. She is a board-certified dermatologist. She practices in Arizona, and I love how she combines traditional dermatology care with a more integrative approach involving wellness and diet and exercise and lifestyle factors into helping give her patients amazing skin. And she has also really developed a unique interest and passion for taking care of adolescent skin. And adolescent skin can be challenging, right? Adolescence can be challenging, or at least it was for me. And being able to balance the needs of an adolescent skin with the still developing skin barrier is so important. And if you've been watching the news, social media, anything like that, you've seen that there has just been this explosion in interest in tween and teen skincare. And a lot of times it's actually backfiring and it's causing a lot of harm and damage to this young skin and really unnecessary, expensive, and not establishing healthy skin habits for these impressionable young patients of ours, or young kids, really, right? And so today we're going to be talking about why this skincare craze is happening and what do tweens and teens really need for healthy, beautiful skin, right? Certainly not anti-aging for an 8-year-old, but what are some things that they do need, and how can we help this young generation develop healthy skin habits that are more than just what they put on their skin, that can really just help them through all the decades of life to come. And Dr. Jeffy also is going to be talking about her skincare line that she created to fill this gap, fill this need for science-backed, unhyped skincare with safe products for tweens and teens called Between. So if you have a tween or teen in your life, you are not going to want to miss this episode. Dr. Jeffy, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Mina.
Dr. Jeffy, I'm so thrilled to have you on because you are putting out such amazing information on your social media platforms about this topic about tweens and teens and their skincare habits. And is it good? Is it bad? Have we gone too far? And so I'm so thrilled to have you here to really dive into it. And I know that this is an area that is of particular interest to you. And I would just love to know, how did this sort of focus within dermatology, how did you get drawn to it?
Yeah, so really in the last couple of years of my practice, I just noticed more and more parents really struggling with trying to figure out what they should be using for their kids who had normal, healthy skin. They were just getting confused when they would go to the drugstore, unsure what products to use, what was a safe routine for their kids. And I just really noticed I was getting more and more questions about that. And that is what has driven my interest in this area.
It seems like this whole area has just exploded in the last several years. And of course, I mean, I know I was interested in skin and skincare when I was maybe not a tween, but certainly a teen. And I struggled with acne. So that was really my interest, was how do I get rid of my acne? But it seems like people younger and younger, even my 8-year-old is kind of talking about skincare and a beauty routine. Is it just me, or are we really, are kids at an earlier and earlier age getting into this?
No, I think you're exactly right. Kids are getting into it earlier and earlier. I'm in my mid-40s, and when I was younger, it was looking to maybe a certain group of popular kids, and I wanted, because we all as kids have this desire to fit in. And so it was things like certain fashion items or maybe purses. But the interesting thing is that now it's skincare because of how much social media is in front of our kids. You can see influencers, or, we'll call them the popular kids, what they're doing at home. And so you want those items. But the interesting thing is that these are items that can actually hurt you, not just a purse that's going to sit on your shoulder.
Such a great point, and we'll really delve into that later too. But I would love to just know, so when we're talking about tweens, right, is that like 8 to 12, 10 to 12? What is sort of the reference age?
I mean, there's no exact here, but I would generally say that 8 to 12 is sort of the tween range.
So what should a tween be doing for their skin? I can just say I have 2 kids. I hope they wash their face in the shower with a gentle cleanser. Not 100% sure on that. And I can barely get them to moisturize their hands, even though it's winter and they're very dry, or their lip. And in the summertime, they do wear sunscreen, they wear hats. But that's kind of my children's skincare routine. So what should a tween be doing?
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're exactly right. There are 2 very wide ranges of kids here. There are these kids that are super interested in learning off of social media about maybe ways to take care of their skin, products that they may be interested in using. But then you have on the other end of the spectrum, kids like yours, kids like my child. I have a 14-year-old son, and exactly like, does he wash his face? I am not entirely sure. But to answer your question, what products should they be using? Really want to focus on keeping the routine simple if your child has healthy skin, because their skin is really already perfect. It's doing all of its functions how it should. There is not damage from the sun that they need to try to eradicate. So it's really preserving that health. And so using a simple regimen that they can be consistent with, so cleanser, a moisturizer, and of course, sunscreen. That is probably the most important thing that kids can do for their skin. Again, it's functioning perfectly. They do not need anti-aging ingredients like adults would think to address their concerns. We know that 90% of the changes that we see in the skin over a lifetime are from chronic sun damage. So the best thing your kiddo can do is be wearing sunscreen constantly. And then, of course, avoiding some things that maybe not tweens would be doing necessarily, but teens, things like dabbling in alcohol or, vaping, keeping in mind nutrition. So those are the things that a kid really needs to focus on, is kind of preserving that skin health.
I really think keeping it simple is what adults should be doing too, which I feel people go too far as adults as well. But I really feel like in the early ages, the tween and teenage years, I mean, this is when really helping them establish healthy skincare habits is really paramount, right? Because they're not necessarily going to do everything you say when they're teenagers or off at college, but you just kind of plant the seed now and hope that they do hear it, they take it in, and that when they're young adults and growing, that they will follow that, which is, keeping it simple, a gentle cleanser, wearing sunscreen, really stressing that. I laugh, but it makes me sad that we even are talking about anti-aging in 8-year-olds or 10-year-olds, right? It just seems crazy that now is 8 too old? We need to turn the clock back. So I feel like at this age, empower them with a healthy message about how they look and their skin health and proactive things they can be doing, like washing their face and wearing sunscreen. So I love that. Now, you had said earlier some of these products can be damaging. I mean, is that really true? Are these products really going to hurt their skin, or what should we be worried about then?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think these products can damage their skin. Just earlier this week, I had a patient in my office. She was a tween, and she was using a retinol eye cream. And she had a horrible contact dermatitis with lichenified, thickened skin. I mean, it was impressive. I actually had to convince her that this was the eye cream doing this. I mean, she still wasn't convinced that that was the problem. And it's going to take months for that to totally resolve. So she's gone from not having a problem at all to maybe being concerned about, anti-aging and wanting to do something that she thinks is going to help, to actually damaging her skin and then having to deal with that aftermath for months. And, I always worry about kids when they have things like breakouts or really anything that makes them look visibly different, because it definitely affects their self-esteem and how they feel about themselves and interact with their peers. So that's not permanent, but that is definitely permanent to her skin. But that is definitely going to give her a good couple of weeks to months of problem to deal with. And then I very frequently will see problems with acne. So convincing kids that they need to do less with their products, use fewer things will often help them clear their skin. And I mean, I have numerous kind of examples that I see in my clinic about damage. The other question is that if these kids can continue to use products that are low level, harming their skin barrier, is that actually hurting their skin's ability to protect itself from the sun in the future? I don't think we 100% know the answer to that. That is one of the functions of our skin. And if it is not able to function properly, they may actually be doing that damage instead of improving it.
Such a great point that the skin barrier is still maturing when you're so little. And so while we love retinoid products for more mature skin, and we do use it for acne, an eye cream for someone very young with that delicate eyelid skin, it's just not a good choice. And also, these kids don't necessarily know how to use it, right? They may be smearing it on thinking it's like a lotion when really they need to use a tiny little bit, not a lot. A teenager doesn't need to worry about fine lines around the eyes, right? So there is, I feel like, this paradox because people will say, well, you recommend retinol for acne, so why can't my 12-year-old use it for eye cream or anti-aging? And what are kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I always kind of explain if we're treating acne with a retinoid, there's benefit, right? If your child is just using a retinoid for prevention, for anti-aging, they don't need that. There's no benefit they can get. There's only potential negative in terms of damaging their skin barrier. But that's a different story with acne. They can we know these medications improve acne, but we are often having to make changes in someone's routine, having to educate kids about how to appropriately use these products to minimize that irritation. Because we don't want that, because that can even contribute to breakouts and make them not want to use the product when we're, using it to treat acne.
You had kind of touched on this before about acne, that a lot of times with acne, and I'm speaking from personal experience, I wanted to scrub my face as hard as possible, wanted to dry it out as hard as possible. And I think we're similar ages, so you probably remember the St. Ives apricot scrub. I was a big fan. And also the Sea Breeze astringent, because I had oily skin and I thought if I remove every drop of oil, every trace of oil, my acne will clear up. And by doing that, and of course also picking, right, I was really, really damaging my skin barrier and then making it even harder to use the medication, the retinoid that I was given to help combat my acne. So I think just educating this population is so important that no, you're not going to try to just scrub all your acne off. And I actually just saw a young woman, a teenager who I don't really do a lot of acne treatment in my office, but she wanted to ask me about it, or she was telling me how she was really scrubbing her face. And so I really took the time to help her learn that actually that is not the best approach to acne. So really teaching this young generation how to appropriately take care of their skin is really, I think, half the battle, right? And it's less about the products and actually just these healthy habits they should be starting. So I love that you're helping spread that word. What other products are potentially harmful for these tweens, these young people who don't necessarily have any skin issues?
Yeah, so you touched on the physical scrubs. So definitely would avoid those with young, healthy skin. I also suggest avoiding some of the lightening agents that are out there, things like vitamin C, which can be pretty irritating, azelaic acid, which can be irritating, exfoliating acids. Again, we sometimes use these to treat acne, but for normal skin, I do not think that that is appropriate. The other thing is heavily fragranced products. When we're using these on skin that is so young, much more easy to become sensitized, irritated from fragrance. And really, that's kind of all the rage with a lot of these products is fragrance and all these extracts, really of questionable benefit, but really a great potential to irritate and sensitize the skin. So I kind of encourage, avoiding all of those things.
Yeah, it's kind of like also they don't need those actives, right? Because vitamin C, we use that to help brighten or help with pigmentation. The azelaic acid, again, pigmentation or rosacea. And, strong alpha hydroxy acids, things like that. We're removing kind of sun damage. And at this young age, that's not really a concern. So I think a lot of the times just educating them on, well, and I tell this to my friends and adults too, know what you're using and why you're using it, right? So if everyone's using a vitamin C serum, but you don't really have any of the issues, you don't need to use it. Or, I had a friend ask me about her skincare regimen. She's using all these acne products. And I was like, well, do you have acne? And she said, well, no. And I'm like, well, then stop using all of these things. So just knowing what the active is supposed to do and then determining whether you really need that or not. And for these younger patients, they really don't need it. And again, it can just irritate their skin barrier. So yeah, I love that you also mentioned these extracts. That seems to be like all natural is so popular, right? And I love natural things too, right? I mean, but just because it's natural doesn't necessarily mean, oh, it's not going to do any harm. There are plenty of natural things that can cause allergic contact dermatitis and rashes and irritation for sure. So I think there's this false security that, well, it's natural, it's not going to harm me, right?
Exactly. I mean, yes, look at something like poison ivy. That's the analogy I give patients because it's simple. That is a plant. It's trying to hurt you. So it's not a clear cut. You can use something natural and it's not going to harm your skin. To your point about wanting to know the reason you're using certain actives, I often ask my younger patients, why are you using this product? And generally they tell me not because of some benefit they can get from some active in it, but because it looks cool. It looks cute on their vanity. I've had patients tell me, well, hey, I know that it would probably be better if I used a drugstore brand. I've seen dermatologists talk about that, but they just don't look very cute. I don't think every child is an educated consumer about anti-aging. This is just what's the popular trend right now with these products looking colorful.
You're spot on with that, right? Like it's more appealing. I can, if I take my kids to the store, I can always know what they're going to gravitate towards, right? It's like the bright colors or a fun image or logo, things like that. It's really appealing. And fragrances, right? Like my children love things that smell good. And it's not that I'm trying to like take all the fun out, right? It's just I know that for many people, these fragrances can be irritating. And I do not particularly have sensitive skin, but even for me, every now and then I'll use soap with fragrance and all of a sudden have a rash or I'm breaking out or my eyes are itchy. So yeah, and then you got to deal with that, which is no fun. But it does seem like the packaging is so important for kids. They want to be able to take pictures of it or do an Instagram post with it. And also what their friends are using, right? They don't want to be the only kid buying the drugstore brand generic moisturizer when all their friends have like the fancy, sexy looking products. So what do you advise? You've got a 14-year-old. What should I be doing? What should someone listening be doing if they have a kid who really wants those products?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think within all the brands out there, even the, viral brands, there are still products that are more acceptable than others. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Maybe you get your child, you sort of compromise and you get your child a cleanser. This is going to be a leave-on product. So hopefully the chance of it causing irritation are not going to be as great. But the issues that you just brought up really influenced my decision to create a skincare line called Between. One issue that you were talking about, the fragrance. So I actually really struggled with this when I was formulating these products because I do know that kids like that, but I let my dermatology side win here and I decided to keep fragrance out of the products. But the point of the line was to keep things very simple. So gentle products, it's a simple regimen, just cleanser and moisturizer. Again, that's really all kids with healthy skin need in addition to SPF. But to keep it simple, all these drugstore lines that most of us have recommended, dermatologists recommended for a long time, they are great. But even those now, there are multiple lines with multiple actives, and I hear parents confused about even how to navigate those. And so that really was a strong driver for my creating Between. All the products are appropriate for young skin. But then I also felt like it was important to make the product feel like it was created for them. Like you said, they want eye-catching packaging. They don't want something that they can just get off of the shelf at the drugstore. So that was also part of it, making it feel like it is specific for them. So hopefully they will be motivated to want to use it and stick to a routine to keep their skin healthy.
Yeah, because they're like us too, right? Like if I don't like how something looks or feels, I'm not going to use it. So I, can move beyond maybe the fancy packaging better than some people, but certainly if I don't like the way a moisturizer feels or a sunscreen feels, I won't use it. And so kids are the same, maybe even more particular for some, right? They need to like how it feels. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like sunscreen for these younger kids. I know some people really worry about chemical sunscreens and just use physical sunscreens. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on, your motivation, your concerns, of course. I mean, personally, my son uses a chemical sunscreen because it spreads easier. And to me, that was important that he's willing to use it over the risk, which I don't even really agree with, that's proposed out there for chemical sunscreens. So in my family, we use both. Personally, I use a physical sunscreen on my face, but if I have to use sunscreen on my body, I need it to rub in better, I use a chemical sunscreen. But I counsel my patients, my parents, if you want to avoid all the controversy, use a physical sunscreen. But I don't have a problem with either. But I do always also point out that sun protection in the form of clothing is much better, much more beneficial. You don't have to worry about reapplying it. You don't have to worry about getting it on. So that is what I encourage my patients to focus on. And then sunscreen just on areas where they can't cover.
I'm such a big proponent of sun protective clothing because I don't love rubbing sunscreen in every 2 hours, and I'm a dermatologist, right? And I know I need to. So I always have a hat with me or long sleeves if I'm outdoors. And nowadays it's really super breathable fabric. You don't feel like you're wearing like a wool turtleneck when you're at the beach. So it's funny, actually, my children are so used to wearing sun protective clothing at the pool. My son feels indecent if he doesn't have his sun shirt on, and he will not go without it. So so I think just instilling sort of those habits early where they're like, no, this is what we do. We wear our sun shirts, we wear our hats when we're outdoors. I think that goes so much farther than buying the latest eye cream. I don't even use an eye cream. So I don't know why like a tween or a teenager is using an eye cream, to be honest, right?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I like to point out is that something that can keep us safe when we're talking to our kids or when we're thinking about products for our kids is to think of our tweens and teens as having skin that's more like a baby's skin. So, you would never dream of putting a retinol cream or using some sort of exfoliant or some kind of heavily fragranced product on your baby. What you would focus on is using sunscreen. And I think if you kind of keep that in mind and use that to open up the conversation with your child, that's sort of a helpful way to think about it for a lot of my patients.
I feel like parents are so hypervigilant nowadays about not just sunscreen, right? Like those babies have the shade canopy up, they've got hats on. Like babies nowadays are super sun protected. I laugh because my dad was in the Navy. I was born in the Pacific Ocean, and I got a sunburn at age 2 weeks, right? So back in the 80s, parents weren't as vigilant, but nowadays, yeah. Like think of your kid's skin as just being like that baby skin and just really be as hyper vigilant protecting it as you did when they were 6 months old. So I love that. Do you have any tips, because you take care of a lot of tweens, a lot of teens, advice for maybe the parents who they're watching these trends on TikTok, social media, and they want to try them out? Like, what do you tell them?
I tell them to try to stay strong. And, if they want to compromise, stick with a cleanser potentially that is not going to be sitting on their skin. If their child is really adamant about it using some serum, just get a hydrating serum, like a hyaluronic acid serum. Toners, I'm also not a fan of. Again, really goes out of the simple two-step avoiding problematic ingredient idea. So spray, facial, just water moisturizing sprays can kind of scratch that itch for their child. But again, having the conversation that self-care is great. I love that we're having a conversation about the skin and how important it is to take care of it, but maybe use the opportunity to talk about sort of how our standards of beauty have evolved and how their skin is still very young and they want to protect it, not actually harm it.
Let them have something fun, right? Because they're going to want, if you take all the fun away, right, they're not going to be happy. But yeah, let them try like a misting spray that people like because it's adding moisture, or a cleanser that they like, or like a fun sunscreen that, is SPF 30 or higher, right? Like maybe let them pick one thing that they can have some fun with and enjoy, as long as it's not irritating their skin, so that they still feel like they're getting to try some stuff without going totally down the rabbit hole of exfoliants and all these actives that they don't need that can really hurt their skin. And I would say, like with my kids, they love massages. And so we'll go and do like, okay, I'm not going to go buy this expensive skincare stuff, but let's go do like a 30-minute foot and neck massage as a family. And they think that is just like the most fun thing to do. So maybe doing other self-care activities that don't involve a complicated skincare routine, because I'm a firm believer, and you probably are as well, that our skin health really starts from the inside, right? What you eat, your diet, your exercise, your stress management, right? So maybe treat yourself to a massage instead of $80 cream that may even hurt your skin and probably won't really help it.
I love that. So massages for everyone.
They would do it every day. Actually, I have a funny video with this weekend. They did a whole like spa routine for my husband. And I'm like cooking in the kitchen thinking like, wait a minute, when do I get to have my spa routine? But, they know the whole shebang. You get the washcloth warm, you soak the feet and all that. So it's kind of cute. Like there's ways to do self-care, to have fun with beauty and products without it being really harmful. And yeah, I'm hoping that we can get the word out there so that tweens and teens can still have fun, but also an appropriate way where they're not harming their skin. So I think that's really the message. We're not just trying to take all the fun away, right?
If we can get these points across about gentle skincare and really how damaging the sun is and how these other factors, these lifestyle factors, play so much more of a role in how our skin looks. I mean, think about how amazing our kids' skin could look if they implemented all of these changes and ignored some of these negative pressures that they're getting. I do think it's an amazing time to be having this conversation. And, I definitely think there are benefits if we could get the kids focused on the right thing.
Totally. And I think also they need to see, they look at what their parents do, right? So if you're doing a very complicated skincare routine, I mean, my advice would be, you don't need that. You're probably wasting time and money and maybe even harming your skin. But if they see you doing a complicated skincare routine, then they're going to want to do that as well, right? But if they see you just always putting on your sunscreen, sun protecting, and having a healthy self-image and using a few but key ingredients, then, maybe they won't admit it at 16, but they see what you're doing. It's somewhere in their brain is registering. So I think also just kind of modeling that behavior is really important too for our kids, especially the younger ones too, because they really want to copy and do what you do.
Yeah, I mean, that is also a great point. I mean, we are all in front of the camera very frequently these days. You can take endless number of photos with your phone in a few minutes. Kids are often doing online classes or extracurricular activities. We're all seeing ourselves so much more on camera, and that leads to critiquing. I mean, it even happens to me, being in front of the camera more and more. I'm obsessed now with a bit of an asymmetry on my face, but I mean, I never even knew that was there before. But I'm an adult. I can get past it. I'm not focusing on it, but that's the world we live in, and that's partly driving this as well. And for parents who are on Zoom calls all the time.
You're so right. It's been this explosion, I feel like, too, since the pandemic. We've never stared at ourselves more than in the last couple of years, right? And I see that too. I'll be like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I looked like that from that angle, or without my ring light on, that doesn't look so good. So yeah, that's a great point. Like we're so hypercritical of ourselves nowadays, and that's trickling down to younger and younger and younger, just as much as we can to just help instill healthy self-image, self-worth, that it's more than just how you look. But it's hard for these kids too, right? All these filters too that people use, And sometimes it's obvious when it's a filter, but a lot of times it's not. And I think kids, even adults, even me, sometimes can have a hard time distancing ourselves when we see someone who looks perfect, who looks flawless, and you see yourself and you're like, I don't quite look like that. That can be really hard. And so, yeah, I think these kids have a lot they're trying to juggle, and they're trying to grow up in a world that's really complicated, more complicated than we had. And but I would just like to say one thing that doesn't have to be complicated is your skincare routine, right? Dr. Jeffy, it's been super fun having you. I've learned so much, so many great tips for as my kids get older, and I know I'm really going to be in the throes of this. But can you just maybe share with us your top 3 tips for dealing with tween and teen skincare?
Number 1, keep it simple. Number 2, focus on sunscreen. And number 3, focus on healthy lifestyle habits to keep your skin looking as nice as possible as you do age, because it's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah, so prevention is so much better than trying to reverse it, right? I wish I had taken that advice when I was younger too. So I love it. Well, Dr. Jeffy, this has been a lot of fun. You put out really amazing content on your social media platform, and people may want to come see you in person. So where can they find you and follow you?
On both Instagram and TikTok, I am Brooke Jeffy, MD. My skincare line Between is Meet Between, and it's Meet, MEET, BTWN. And if anyone is in the Scottsdale, Phoenix area, my practice is accepting new patients. I practice medical dermatology. Of course, do have a focus on acne and tween and teen skin health. And you can reach me at my practice, which goes by my name, Brooke Jeffy, MD. Very creative there.
I love it. Well, we will put all of that in the show notes so people can just easily click on all of that and follow you and find you. And we'll definitely include your skincare line as well. Just curious, is that something people can buy directly, or is it through a physician office?
So it can be purchased on the website, which is meetbetween.com, or in my clinic.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Dr. Jeffy. And thank you for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.